Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald. Welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders. Appreciate everybody being in here. College football playoff is complete. The expanded playoff, in my opinion, was a success, but we're going to talk about that today. Was it a success? Some of the feel. Is there a changing in the guard, Fitz, as far as the conferences are concerned? So we're going to cover all those things for you today in what I could say is the last football edition for a while. But you know how football is, man. It just keeps going and going and going. So we'll mix it in with basketball as we go. So appreciate everybody being in here. Before we get into it, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to hit the comment section, and always hit that notification bell so you know when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. So getting into this. So to me, I guess the first thing, Fitz, was it a success? You know, we expanded to 12 teams. There's a couple teams that I think everybody would agree you're not sure that they deserve to be in. But in an expanded setting, it's always going to be that. Yeah. There's always going to be somebody that gets left out that we think deserves to be in. There's usually one or two teams. Same thing happens in the NCAA tournament, which I think this kind of has that feel, a little bit of a March Madness-y type of feel when you invite more teams. Somebody gets left out. You can make a case for it, yada, yada, yada. Did we see a good product? But just off the bat, do you think that it was a success?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind this was a huge success. Now, does it need some tweaking? Yeah, it does. In fact, we can get into that on this or another show. But I think the end result was we saw more people with skin in the game, more programs with skin in the game, and that's more fans with skin in the game. Getting to the playoff became a really tangible goal for a lot of programs that marked a step far short of winning a national title, but was still significant for their programs and gave them another measurement by which to show progress.
Right.
And to, in the first year, have a team that had to go through 4 games, that did not have a bye, that wasn't a conference champion, that wouldn't have been in a 4-team field, to have that team go through a gauntlet, which it did.
Right.
Shows that this worked perfectly. It just like basketball now, we're going to measure the cumulative effect of a season on a good team and where they're at the season's end. Big B, I'm going to make the argument that they don't win this national title without losing to Michigan, and that's a step that wouldn't have existed before this year. Losing to Michigan was the disqualifier for getting into the playoff, but they got in because of the new expansion, and that is what put them in a position to win a national title. I love it. I think it was amazing. Ohio State proved themselves over the course of 16 games, that they're the best team in the country, and they didn't back into it. They earned it the entire road through that playoff. Congratulations to the Buckeyes, and congratulations to the transfer portal, because you provided quarterbacks for 2 programs to play for a national title. And I think that will have an impact for a long time on college football going forward.
It will. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm going to go back to one of your points here. You were talking about they wouldn't have gotten into the title game without the expanded playoff, because losing to Michigan would have eliminated Ohio State. That would have been their second loss, and it would have eliminated them because there was so many other teams that would have been ahead of them as far as the college football rankings. They would have been out. And the reason that I like the expanded playoff, because here's the thing, if the one thing about ESPN and that crazy ESPN buzz that they have, that nonsense, let me say, they do make some good points from time to time. You want to see the best teams get in. Now, their definition of best teams, I think, is absolutely absurd, and I think we could all agree. but at least the point is right. You want to see the best teams get in, and you want to see the best, if who is the best team win this thing. Can the best team actually win it? This year, Ohio State was the best football team. I understand that they lost a couple of games, but I think people, now that we have this expanded playoff, I think people got to get over the fact that, before, for so long in college football, if you weren't undefeated, then you weren't the best team. That doesn't mean that anymore. And I don't know that it's ever meant that, to be honest with you. That's just what we placed on it. Well, now just because you lose a game or two doesn't mean you're not the best team. And Ohio State was the best team. And they're going to have 15 to 20 guys from this team play in the National Football League. So when you got that many guys that are going to play at the next level, and I don't mean this year, I'm just talking about the totality of that football team, that's a ton. That's a fourth of your rosters going to the NFL. That's insane. So what are we talking about here? And so I like that fact that, you know what? They were the best team. They came through this gauntlet. And speaking another point, Fitz, you brought up 16 games. Have you heard anybody complaining about how many games that Ohio State had to play? Like, have you heard that anywhere? Remember, that was one of the big arguments. Oh, these college kids are playing too many games. I know at the FCS level, they play that many games. But, well, my goodness, they're playing so many games. You haven't heard that at all. Why? Because all we care about is seeing the football, man. That's it. We love good football. We love the competition. We love to watch it. Don't tell me that, oh, they're playing too many games. Nobody wants to hear that, especially now. That was just a weak argument for somebody to throw out there.
Well, I don't think Ohio State's going to complain. I mean, like, oh, we played too many games. Yeah, we won a national title, but boy, that was tough on our bodies. It wasn't worth it. It was worth it. Yes. It's not worth it if you lose, probably, but I think that is something they're going to need to look at. I totally agree with that. I think there's some interesting things to reform college football that, if we're going to stay on this playoff model, would be interesting to look at. And we can get into that in another show. But let's be honest. These kids got plenty of rest here down the stretch. Even though they played a lot of games, they didn't play it on short turnarounds. They were able to heal up their bodies for the most part, unless it was a serious injury. And it is a big toll. But we're now, maybe entering the era of revenue share. They're not technically employees, but I think most of us with a brain would recognize them more as professional athletes, and now it becomes a job. So less sympathy on that front, maybe. But I think the general public, as a voting segment, would say more college football, more me watch. We watched it all, and it was incredible football. And you could feel the tension build through the 4 rounds.
Yep.
That was something completely new. Hey, we beat this team last week. Now we're playing for a national title. It just didn't have much buildup to it. And now we've seen a team that didn't get a bye, but did have a home game at least, run a gauntlet of really good programs to get there and prove themselves in a way that no one else has in the past. So nobody sit there and tell me that, well, they didn't deserve to be in the playoff to start with. Young man or woman, you need to catch up. The rules have changed. Now 12 are getting in. They belonged in the playoff. They clearly did. And maybe we need to go to 16 so nobody has the advantage or disadvantage of a bye. But these were the rules of the game this year. Ohio State won the rules of the game. And Ohio State fans, feel lucky you didn't get your emotional way and have him fired when he lost to Michigan. That'd probably been bad for the program. That'd probably been worse for your program than losing to Michigan. So I know it doesn't feel that way because you're emotional, but Ohio State was the best team. And Big B, this may not be the sign we fully want because, as you mentioned, they might have had the most talent in the entire nation.
Yeah.
And the added ability to get in despite those 2 losses allowed them to win the national title still. Maybe the message still is those who can recruit the best and buy the best are going to be the best, because you got to be the best to survive that kind of gauntlet. I don't know. We'll shake it out later, but congratulations to the Buckeyes. And also, as a topic I know you want to discuss, I don't see a huge separation here between the quality of football between the Big 12 and what I saw last night. Maybe Ohio State at its peak is pretty incredible, but I got to say it. Notre Dame went through that playoff, won a lot of games, and I think matches up with Big 12 teams pretty evenly.
Yeah, I'll get to that because that's a great point. The one thing that I wanted to touch on, and you kind of glanced through, past it, and I'm glad you brought it up, is, you know, basically Ohio State bought a football team.
Right.
They bought the talent. They bought a football team. And again, I'm a person that I've been around college football forever. It's not that teams weren't buying players before. It's just legal now. So they bought talent. They recruit talent. They're able to keep a lot of their in-house talent. And I was always a person that, and I'm still a person that says, you know, there's always haves and have-nots. There's always going to be in any type of society. College football is no different. And nothing about the transfer portal or NIL changed that. It was the haves still have, and the have-nots are still trying to catch up. Nothing changed as far as that is concerned. The only difference that changed is that now teams aren't able to stockpile talent like they were before. And that changes the landscape, which means a team like Indiana can be horrible one year and make the college football playoff the next year. Arizona State can be horrible one year, go to a new conference, win it, and go to the college football playoff the next year. That's what all this did. Ohio State has always been good. Will probably always be good. They don't necessarily have the most money, but they got a ton of it. But I don't think anything really changed in that fact. I just think we're going to make a specific, we want to win right now. And this is how we can win. I think more teams are going to do that. But the playing field will be leveled out because football is a game of, just like sports, football is a game of injuries. You can't pay third stringers that kind of money, Fitz. It's got to be, well, yes, we're paying frontline guys. But if you get some injuries, I mean, look at Georgia. They weren't the same team, but their quarterback goes out. They're not even remotely close to the same team. Not to mention, and I'm not trying to take away from Notre Dame. Notre Dame physically beat up Georgia. Let's just call it what it is. They physically whipped them. Okay, up front, didn't have anything to do with the quarterback. But Georgia wasn't even the same team without their quarterback. And that's where the difference comes in, is that you can buy these teams because this will become the norm.
Yep.
But the difference is you don't have the backups behind them, Fitz, to say, you know what, a guy gets hurt, we'll just plug somebody else in, another 4 or 5 star guy. No, you're not. That guy's playing at Mississippi State, Oklahoma State. You know, he's playing somewhere else. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. I love that fact. But when it works, in Ohio State's case, it works. I think this is what the transfer portal meant. You mentioned it at the top. They had a quarterback. He played at Kansas State last year. He was pretty good. I mean, he had a pretty good career at Kansas State, if I don't say so myself. I think it was an excellent career. But for whatever reason, I mean, that's a different conversation on why he left. But he did, and he went to a team that I think everybody can agree, Ohio State, he had access to better players, and he was able to elevate himself. Will that get him a higher draft pick? Probably. Would he have been drafted higher if he stayed another year at Kansas State? And even if he had great success, probably not, because you go on a bigger stage, you compete at a bigger stage, you do well at a bigger stage. Yes, he bet on himself. But I would venture to say, though, Fitz, that is not the norm, is that guys that bet on themselves in the transfer portal, you hear about the successes, but what you don't hear about is the abundance of failure that happens. Yes, I'm transferring, I'm betting on myself, and you don't even get on the field at the next school that you go to. And then next thing you know, you're at another school, and it's just an absolute disaster. So I commend Will Howard. I commend Riley Leonard. Both of those guys were firm in where they were. Maybe not Will Howard as much, but they bet on themselves, and they won. They won. I don't even know if they're big-time quarterbacks to go to the next level in the NFL. I think Will Howard's got a shot, to be an NFL quarterback. I don't know how big time, but he can definitely be a backup for sure. But they bet on themselves and they won. I think this will be the norm. You mentioned it. I believe so.
Last night was Monday night's game was the difference between concept and proof of concept. Now a program for the first time in the history of college football doesn't need to develop a frontline quarterback, an elite quarterback to contend for a national title, or at least a incredible game manager. If you're loaded with talent like Ohio State, you don't need to bother with that step. Go shopping. Go pick up someone else another program, other coaches developed, and then win with that guy. And that's maybe the most troubling thing here is that developing a quarterback and a quarterback room was so important to the very fiber of college football success. And now it doesn't matter. Oh, well, we failed at recruiting. They've all transferred. They don't want to be here. So let's just go get this guy from another school that fits our system and pay him like, I don't know how much, millions of dollars to come play as a, hired gun for 1 year. So now they can do that instead of doing what you should do, and that's develop a damn quarterback yourself. And both teams did it. Both teams that played for a national title failed miserably at a core task of a football program, developing a really good quarterback. And so they went and bought one each. And proof of concept is it works, and it'll happen a lot now, a lot more than even what we thought.
It will. But those are the rules.
Right.
And that's the whole thing is that, I get what you're saying is that, they failed at developing a quarterback. Or did they fail, or was it, we're going to bring in this guy. If you want to stay here and compete, by all means, stay here and compete. But we think this guy is can help us. So we're going to bring him in. For instance, Ohio State did the same thing with an NFL running back they have on their roster. They brought in another one and said, hey, how do you feel about this? Guy's like, yeah, bring him on. So I know the concept, and I know people have been out of shape about that, and I get that part. But at the same time, look, man, you either get with the rules and you roll with it or you don't. And if you do, you can have success. If you don't, but you can't complain about it. That's my whole thing is that the schools like the Dabo Sweeneys that were complaining and, hey, man, don't complain. This is what's happening. So you either get with the program or get out. And I'm fine either way. But you can't sit here and bitch and moan about it and then act like, well, whether some disservice has happened to you. No, that's not. We don't have to like the rules. We don't have to agree with the rules, but we do have to go with the rules and what they are. Or you can choose a different profession. But if you're going to be in it, you might as well use it to your advantage. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's not the traditional way, but it is the way.
Yep.
And it's just things are different, man. It's just different these days. And you're going to see it more than just at quarterback. It's offensive lineman. We already do. Offensive line. I need a left tackle. There's the best one in the country. Let's go get him. A guard, a middle linebacker, a corner. You're going to see it all over the place. Ohio State did it successfully this season, but they won't be first of all, they weren't the first. It happened to work for them, and they're definitely not going to be the last. I don't know. I just don't have that big of a problem with it. I just look, and I kind of always go back to this: the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
There's always going to be the haves. There's always going to be the have-nots. It is what it is. You just got to do the best you can.
I don't want to gloss over the accomplishment of these two programs because they bought talent, because that brings in a whole new layer of coaching that we're seeing failing all over the country. And it's to take these different parts from different programs and different places and different people and mold them into a cohesive locker room. Yeah, create a culture. Mm-hmm. And Ohio State and Notre Dame both did that in the midst of, particularly Ohio State, incredible NFL talent that could literally declare, I'm in this for me. And they didn't. Ryan Day created a culture of brotherhood that is difficult to create in most programs, whether you're at Boise State, Texas State, or Ohio State, building a really strong culture is so important, and yet an incredible challenge because there's no right way to do it. Every year is solving a different Rubik's Cube with a different solution. And they got those right in the face of every reason not to. We got a bunch of guys getting paid more money than the coaches. We got a bunch of guys that are looking to the NFL for a career that is going to span many years. And yet they bought into the idea of getting that national title. That's supreme coaching by both of those coaches. And honestly, a lot of the coaches in this did an incredible job building a culture that leveraged them to be able to get to a higher level of play than maybe what even their talent put forth. And that says a lot for Ohio State because they had the talent and added in the culture. That was an incredible college football team.
Yeah, absolutely. He couldn't have said it any better. You can't just win on talent alone.
No.
This is not basketball, where in basketball you can have one guy, maybe two guys, but we've seen it in the NCAA tournament. You can have one guy, and that's your main cog that nobody can stop, and you can get to a Final Four. Sometimes you can even win a national championship if they get on that kind of roll. You can't do that in football. It's literally impossible to do that. You can't even have two guys. Oh, I got a hot quarterback and a receiver. But if your line is garbage, you're not winning, man. It just doesn't work that way. So in football, it's the ultimate team sport. I know that's a cliche, but it absolutely is because it takes so many moving parts for you to be good. And for guys that, again, that have a future that said, you know what? The future is on the line. Look, I heard the thing about Judkins and Henderson, the running backs at Ohio State, this comment that I heard, and it makes perfect sense. Neither one of them were jealous of the other because they were taking carries away from them to save their bodies for the next level. What college kids is thinking that much? They're not thinking that way, especially the money that they're being paid. They're thinking, I got to get out here. I got to do this. No, I'm going to be an NFL draft pick, a high round draft pick, and having this other guy play well, I'm still going to get my opportunities, but he's saving my body so that I don't get so beat up. So I'm beat up at the next level. To get kids to buy in and to believe that fits is incredible next level. Plus, I think what we saw at the college football playoff, you saw teams bond together. You didn't see a bunch of renegades out there. You didn't see that, teams that weren't playing for one another. They may not have played well, but there weren't teams that just fell apart because they couldn't get along. They didn't like this. They were battling each other. You didn't see that. And it's refreshing to see because I know a lot of people think we're getting away from that and it's about me, because it's all about money. We didn't see that in the college football playoff. You didn't. And you can't even say that you saw it. Maybe teams didn't play well. Okay, that's fine. But it wasn't because everybody was so selfish and the team fell apart or the locker room fell apart. That just didn't happen. So for the naysayers out there that don't believe that the team concept is still around, just watch the college football playoff. You'd have seen the team concept. It was right there, Fitz, for the team.
And for the record, I am not saving my body. I'm putting it all out there every day on this show and other shows. I'm not saving it for the next level because I don't have a next level. But anyhow, yes, they put it all out there. It was a great football game. And Big B, I don't think we should ignore the fact that these two teams didn't get buys because all the teams that did get buys lost, which is interesting. They literally ran the gauntlet to get where they are. And here they are. They ran through every obstacle that the bracket put forth and they won. And I feel like this was the most deserving national title game we've ever had because for the first time in football, you didn't just have to prove it over the course of your regular season schedule and win your conference title and get into a beauty pageant in which a bunch of old farts in a room select the best teams. Now you got a bunch of old farts in a room selecting a lot of good teams, but then you had to prove it. And they did.
Correct.
They did, man. They did. Ohio State's going to go down as one of the great teams because they did what nobody else had been able to do in the past. They're a 2-loss national champion that is clearly the best team right now in college football. Think about that. That is a monumental shift in how we measure greatness at the college football level, and I love it.
Yeah, they literally got no break to, and I don't mean time off. I'm talking about they got no break in going to the national championship. Now they beat a Tennessee team, which I think everybody under the sun that has a brain knew was overrated. But I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be in. So pipe down, SEC fans. We'll get into that here in just a second. But I think everybody knows Tennessee wasn't that good. Okay, fine. They beat them. Then they have to play Oregon, who they'd already lost to, who's the number 1 team in the country. They blow the doors off of them. Then they go to Texas. People had said Texas, not that good, had an easy SEC schedule, which 2 things can be true. You know, Texas can be a really good team, which they were, but they also had an easy SEC schedule. Those are just facts. But they go and they beat Texas, not to mention the game was in Dallas. I would guess there's a decided advantage of Texas playing in well, technically Arlington in the Cotton Bowl, but okay, whatever. And then you go and you play Notre Dame. Now, they were more talented than Notre Dame, but people are trying to say, well, Notre Dame wasn't that good. They lost to Northern Illinois. I'd fight you on that. Maybe they did lose to Northern Illinois. Well, not maybe. They did lose to them, and maybe they weren't good then. But seasons don't end the second game of the year. That's not how this works. Teams are allowed to get better. You're allowed to keep playing and get better. Notre Dame did that. And Notre Dame didn't have an easy road. You might say, okay, well, they beat Indiana. Maybe they didn't deserve to be in. I'll give you that. Okay. But then they beat Georgia. And don't talk to me about Georgia not having their quarterback. Georgia didn't lose the game because their quarterback wasn't there. Georgia lost the game because up front on both sides of the ball, Notre Dame blew their doors off. They couldn't do anything. That's why you lost the football game, period, end of story. So both teams deserve to be there. Both teams played well. Ohio State, you thought it was going to end up being a blowout, 31-7. It wasn't. Notre Dame made a game of it. Thought it was a costly mistake. I thought Freeman should have went for it on that. I think it was 4th and 9. I'm like, you're kicking the field goal that still doesn't get you any closer. 3 points isn't going to help you there. Even if you don't get it, make them drive the whole field. And I just didn't like that. It ended up not necessarily mattering because you don't know if they would have gotten it. But either way, great football game. What we would ask for. But here's my question to you. Does this signal a changing of the guard? 2 years in a row, no SEC team in the national championship game. This year, you could even say, I mean, Texas was good. Was there anybody that you thought, oh, man, SEC, they got to be in this thing? You didn't think there was a dominant SEC team, but was there even really a dominant football team in college football? Ohio State was the best team. But you wouldn't say they were just dominant. Is this maybe signaling a little bit of a changing of the guard? Has the Big Ten caught up with the SEC is my question.
Well, I think we get wrapped up in talking about conferences as a totality and give credit just to the top. I think the top teams this year were in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They were apparently in that region of the United States because Notre Dame's in that signature too, that footprint. But it doesn't mean that there's not good teams down in the SEC. Maybe it's just a cycle. They're cycling through and someone needs to emerge. But I also think we're seeing a changing of the guard because the rules have changed.
Correct.
We all know it. And I don't even bother denying it at this point. It's not like you can retroactively get in trouble, but you were buying players the entire time and nobody else was because they were trying to play by the rules. We know it. You know it. Everyone knows it. And now those rules changed. And I think the SEC will adapt to it, but also I think in the interim, it's up to the Big 12 and ACC in particular to close the gap further. And Big B, I don't think the gap is as big as people want to say it is, but there's a gap there. I think what we saw last night, particularly from Notre Dame, is that the Big 12 can play with those teams. It's when you get that convergence of incredible talent that you recruited and bought, and you build a locker room. I don't know how the Big 12 overcomes that right now, but you don't build up in one season and change everything. You got to make this a process, and the Big 12 has started that process of upping its game, and now it's just got to continue to sustain that.
Yeah, the Big 12 could have competed on any level in the college football playoff this year. Multiple teams could have competed on that level. Let's just put that out there. I mean, and there's going to be people that say, no way, that you have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, they could have. You're telling me that BYU couldn't have competed in these games just like they did, or Arizona State did. Come on. Yeah, they absolutely could have competed in these games. I'm not saying they would have won the national title. I'm saying they could have competed. And isn't that all we're asking for in the Big 12, is just to have an opportunity at the table, is just to say, hey, we can compete with you guys. Just give us an opportunity. And that's what they have so not wanted to do, is give us an opportunity, because if they let us get a foot in the door, we may kick the door open. And if we happen to kick the door open, oh, guess what? We're bigger than you are, or we're just as tough as you are if we kick the door open. And I think for so long, that's been the case. I think Arizona State, even in that loss, Fitz, because of the way that they lost, I think that did wonders for the Big 12. Wonders. Because you haven't heard anybody say, well, Arizona State didn't belong. Well, the Big 12, the Arizona State had no business being in the conference or in the college football playoff. You haven't heard anybody say that. The only thing you've heard people say is, yeah, man, Arizona State got a raw deal. Yeah, maybe they should have won that. Arizona State, if they win that, who knows how many games they could have won in this thing. That's all you've heard. We said it at the beginning of the season. We said it all year long. We said it before the college football playoff even started. You got to go and represent the Big 12 well. Whoever that was, you got to represent it well. And quite frankly, outside of winning, I don't know that Arizona State could have done anything more to represent the Big 12 and to get some legitimacy brought back in the world of college football. I thought that they did a masterful job at doing that. They competed well. I think the Big 12 is on the rise. I'm not saying it's caught up with the others. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that if we get some more opportunities, which maybe this is going to happen, then the Big 12, again, got to continue to put its best foot forward. But I think that'll start happening more and more. And the ceiling that was so far out of reach is starting to come down. And that's where it is. It's not that the floor is necessarily sinking or the floor is rising up, Fitz. I don't believe that. I just believe the ceiling is coming down. And because the ceiling is coming down, Big 12 teams are like, hey, it's within our grasp now. It's within our reach. We can compete with that. We can't compete with teams that got 4 and 5 stars on the 4 deep. You know, we can't compete with that. But now we can compete with you. Absolutely. I love it.
Right. And let's point out this for the sake of the Big 12. The portal changes a lot of things. But last night we saw a quarterback who had won a Big 12 title and had played in the Big 12 transfer to Ohio State and win a national title. But here's what's significant about it. Ohio State didn't steal that guy.
No.
I mean, that happens a lot. We're seeing quarterbacks literally get bought from Georgia to go to Miami now. We're seeing that go on. They didn't steal him, though. That's everyone lives within their own bubble of trying to get to that next level. And Kansas State had chosen the young quarterback that could give them up to 3 years over the veteran quarterback who might have improved them some this year, but that wasn't what they were after. They were over the long term. So Kansas State had its quarterback of its choosing, and Ohio State won with the other guy. Big B, I think that says a lot about the talent in the Big 12 that, no, you didn't come in and swoop in and steal the guy that was the key to our system. We were literally kind of saying, you know what, we're going to go with the young guy because of the future, because you're not going to get us much farther than he can this next year. And I still believe that to be true. And Will Howard did exactly what Will Howard sought to do. He wants to go to the NFL, but he realized he needed another step, another year. oh, let's go to Ohio State with all this talent and win a national title. He said it from the moment he arrived. Hell, he said it from the moment he arrived in Manhattan, Kansas. He wanted to win a national title. And that son of a gun went and won a national title. So I feel like there's a lot of winners here, including the Big 12 and how all this played out.
Absolutely. It's also noted to point out it's not that Ohio State had a lack of five-star talent at the quarterback position that Will Howard had the job in front of. So let's not forget that. I know they were young, but it's not like he just went in and they Ohio State had no talented guys at quarterback. That is not the case. They had plenty of talented guys, but they said, no, we want this guy. He may not be the most talented out of all of the guys in the quarterback room, but he's the most seasoned and he's the best leader of this football team. And sometimes that's what it takes, Fitz. You don't always have to have the five-star guy. You just need the guy that's going to be best to lead your football team. And Will Howard was that. He bet on himself. Riley Leonard, again, bet on himself and came from Duke, I know, wasn't the most successful program historically, but when he was there, they were good. They were good this past year. So they were going to be good again. But he said, nope, I want to go to Notre Dame. I got a better opportunity. I love that for college football players to be able to bet on themselves and win, because when they bet on themselves and lose, I don't like it, but you know what? It's their choice. And that's all, at least me and a lot of people have been asking for. Just give guys and gals choices. Right. Whether it works out or not, that's not up to us. That's totally not up to us. But when you take the choices away and you try to limit them, that's where the problems come in. But just give them the opportunity. And like I always say, there's consequences to everything, good and bad, no matter what you do. And sometimes the consequences are good. Sometimes they're bad. They're bad. And transfer portal allows for that, Fitz.
Yep, sure does. I love it. It was a great day for college football. It was an interesting day in America. And let's do it again next year. Let's have some more fun starting in, let's say, August 23rd in Dublin, Ireland.
There you go. Absolutely. So appreciate everybody. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and definitely get in those comments section. We appreciate you guys. Everybody have a good one.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.